welcome to the Chapter 1 review of this book right here. Let's get it right in front of the screen. Hacking Kubernetes, Threat-Driven Analysis and Defense. So if you're watching this, I assume you're either reading the book, you are interested in the topic, or you just watched my other videos. Whatever the case is, before getting into it, I highly, highly, highly recommend knowing a little bit about Kubernetes. Kubernetes is this multi-headed monster. It's like an abstraction over containers, aka if you've heard of Docker, that's one container runtime. So if you don't know what that is, stop right now, go learn a little bit about it, come back, you'll have a lot more peace of mind. Okay, so why this book? There's a lot of books on container security and Kubernetes security specifically. And I don't know, this one was just written within a year, and I really liked that. So one thing that really bothers me is like when I read a book about a certain technology topic and it's not relevant anymore. I mean, usually a lot of it stays relevant, but it's just kind of a pet peeve of mine personally. I want it all to be relevant because or else I'm kind of reading the book and then I'm kind of thinking, okay, well, do I need this section? Do I need this section? Maybe I can skip this section. And then I'm just like not in the moment anymore. And so I prefer, when possible, to read a book that was written within the last year when it comes to learning new technology topics. This book fits that criteria. It was written like 7 months ago, and it has great reviews. So that's why I chose this book. Now we're going to read it cover to cover. So Chapter 1 is pretty simple. It basically just goes over an introduction to securing Kubernetes and like the problem at hand. It goes through the structure of the book, which is kind of these attack and defense scenarios between a fictional company called BCTL and a fictional attacker called Captain Hashjack, just like a playful Jack and Jill type scenario for the purposes of the book. It goes through threat modeling, threat actors, and attack trees. So I'm going to go over each one of those things individually. In the link below, you will see kind of an article version of this talk. Just follow along with whichever you prefer. This is chapter 1. We're going to do the other chapters as well. Okay, so this book follows an attack defender scenario. Not all security books do that. I kind of like that. I like that structure because you're always having the attacker mindset in in the scenarios, and I just think, whether you're red team or blue team, that's really helpful because it puts your head in the actual situation instead of just thinking, let's secure this for the sake of securing this. And that kind of leads me into threat modeling. So a quote from the book: understanding how a system is attacked is fundamental to defending it. Something can be insecure, but it can also be invisible to an attacker. Understanding how a system is attacked it's going to save you a lot of time in defending it, and it's also going to help you sell your idea to the stakeholders in your company if you're on a blue team, because nothing is perfectly secure, so you're never going to secure everything completely, and if you try to win that battle, you're going to lose. Just everything can be hacked. So you want to focus your efforts, and that's where threat modeling comes in. And in Kubernetes, a many-headed monster, it's really helpful to know exactly what is like on the internet and what's facing attackers and what's going to be sprayed and preyed upon. And that's usually like the Kube API, I think, but still getting into the book, of course. So threat actors. There's 6 classes of threat actors in chapter 1 that we talk about, and you're gonna recognize some of the names, but the reason we talk about threat actors specifically is we want to see what kind of person is attacking our system and why are they attacking it. It's like when someone robs a bank, it's because they want the money. When someone sprays graffiti on the side of a building, it's because it's fun. And, maybe they want a little bit of notoriety. And so, in order to thwart the efforts of different threat actors, we have to understand why they do what they do and what they're capable of. You don't want to treat a graffiti sprayer like a bank robber. You don't want to treat a bank robber like someone who's just spraying graffiti for fun. And it's actually the same thing when it comes to blue teaming Kubernetes. So our first threat actor, in order of least serious to most serious, is the ScriptCat. They are capable of small-scale denial of service attacks and a couple other things. Again, this is general. It's just a mental model. It helps you with your threat modeling. So up from ScriptCat is just a motivated individual. So they're not just attacking any Kubernetes cluster. Like, they're going for your Kubernetes cluster. So this could be a political activist, hacktivist, a thief, a terrorist, and things that the attacks that they're more likely to carry out include like phishing, DDoS, and whatever else. There's no third thing. So while the ScriptCat would do like a regular denial of service attack from his or her computer, someone who's more motivated and has more machines under their control would maybe go for a distributed denial of service attack using more computers, more firepower. They're better at what they do, basically. Up from motivated individual is an insider, someone who works at the company, someone who has privileges at the company. They're already in the system, so that's like already, you can't defend against that. They can be dangerous. So, for example, one thing that an employee might do is they might try to exfiltrate data for whatever reason, and they can do that. So you would want maybe just monitoring against that. You wouldn't want to like protect against it if it's part of someone's like job duties. It's a balance, of course. So up from insider is someone in organized crime. So we've seen a rise in ransomware these past 2-3 years. Spear phishing is also very common for organized crime because, as fun as it might be to reverse engineer things, the one way that criminals always get into a company is just through the people of the company. It's the exploit that we can't fix. So spear phishing is super common, and I've seen it at the companies that I've worked for. And, sometimes it's successful, sometimes it's not. But, eventually it works when someone's persistent. So there's also two more, like a cloud service insider. It's just an employee that has cloud credentials. They can do terrible things. And then the worst kind of attacker, the most dangerous attacker would be someone who works for a foreign intelligence service, a nation state. And an example of this would be like the SolarWinds attacks that we saw in these past 2 years, I think, or maybe 3 years ago. It's 2022. So SolarWinds was a targeted supply chain attack, which means that they looked at a software that they knew a lot of different companies used, and instead of attacking their final target, which I think in this case was the U.S. government, they attacked someone who provides software to the U.S. government, knowing that there would be less protections around them because they're just a part of the supply chain. These are really dangerous, really widespread attacks, and they're particularly hard to defend against. So that wraps up the threat actors section. Let's talk a little bit about attack trees. That's our last bullet point. So attack trees, it's just one method of like writing graphs for threat modeling, but specifically it focuses around one specific goal of an attacker. So at the top of the attack tree, and I wish I could draw something out for you guys, but just go to the article below and there's a pretty picture. But yeah, it starts with a goal like do a denial of service attack on the Kubernetes cluster. And then at the bottom is like a bunch of different ways that that attack would start. And then, step by step, each node in the tree is a different thing that the attacker would have to do in order to get to that goal. So, it's helpful. It's helpful for like defending your system, especially with Kubernetes. There's many different attacks. There's many different attack vectors, and to really properly enumerate each one, many attack trees help. Attack trees are usually pretty big, but they're great at enumerating the path that an attacker has to take to get something done. So if you're trying to defend against one specific outcome, making an attack tree is a great move. So yeah, in conclusion, Kubernetes is not secure by default. You have to secure it. That's at least been historically true. I don't know. At the time of writing, I believe it's still true. In order to defend Kubernetes, you need to understand it. So, understand what a kubelet is, how it talks to the kube API, what's exposed to the internet in a Kubernetes cluster, because that's going to be the thing that attackers see. That's probably the entry point for them, Most attacks start in a pod, so pod security is something to focus on as well. And then just, I don't know, this is the intro, guys. We won't get too much into it, and I can't really get too much into it because I'm reading this book, just posting chapter by chapter. So I'm certainly not an expert yet, but so far, really learning a lot, enjoying it. Every time I come across a term I haven't heard before, I look it up, and every day learning a lot about Kubernetes security. So yeah, have a good one. Tune in for chapter 2 if it fancies you. And peace. Stay sharp.